Um, Welcome to Unmuted Nation and welcome to Black Woman Hear Me Day 3. If you've been following along or following the nation for any period of time, you've heard a little bit about this series. I'm watching Unmuted Nation or you've never heard of Unmuted Nation, we are live on BossFM Radio every day at 1 p.m. Eastern. For more information, you can download the BossFM Radio app. I'm there. I would love for you to join the nation. You come back on day 2, you're already part of the family. The key thing about Unmuted Nation is that we love to create and facilitate conversations that you take elsewhere. So not conversations that are just happening here on this show, but after the show is over, you should be having these conversations in your text groups. Hopefully, because you're quarantining again, because the virus is rampant in this country. I'm not going to get on that. The crazy thing about what's going on here is that we have been able to facilitate some amazing conversations. We started the series with Black Men Hear Me, a series dedicated to the voices of Black men and allowing them to share their emotions, things that they don't often do, their perspectives and their viewpoints. That's a 5-part series, and it's available in the BossFM Radio app if you want to watch that and follow along. We've been able to do the same thing with some phenomenal women, and today will be the same. So I've got women joining me from across the country, and we'll have conversations so that you can have some insight on the thoughts and perspectives and truth about Black women, because no Black person is monolithic, and we do not want to continue to fan the flames on that lie. So without further or dragging this on, invite a Black woman or invite a Black man, invite some white people that don't know anything about Black people aside from what they read into this conversation, and we'll get started. My first guest joining us tonight is Guinevere. Guinevere and I are going to start having a conversation, and then I'm going to bring Kirsten in. We're going to have a separate conversation, and then I'm going to bring all 3 of them together, and we'll have one major conversation. So grab a snack, and let's get started. Guinevere, welcome to Unmuted Nation.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for joining. I'm sorry, I'm trying to get my technology right. So yeah, listen, it's crazy. It's not a Monday, but it feels that way. I've been working like crazy, but I like to always start out with you just telling me a little bit about who you are, where you're from, and a little bit about what you do.
Okay, great. So my name is Guinevere. I am originally from Bakersfield, California, and then I moved to Los Angeles, California, and currently still reside here when I was 19. And currently I am 27 now.
Okay.
Oh, and then what I do, obviously. So I'm an esthetician and my specialty is skincare. So I talk a lot about skincare on my Instagram. And then I also have a separate business that I was operating before the shutdown where I performed waxing and facial services for people.
Okay, nice. And so you've been a West Coast girl your entire life?
I sure have.
Okay. That's really interesting because I think we've had women from all over the place kind of join the series, and the perspectives, like the goal is not to have the same conversation with the same person. And obviously anytime or any conversation that we're having, there are going to be different perspectives. My first question is going to seem loaded, but I promise it's not. It's really just how we like to kick off the conversation because the answer is different for everyone. My first question for you is, Guinevere, when did you know that you were in fact a Black girl or a Black woman?
Oh, wow. Okay, so I was about 14, I believe. And my experience was walking home with a group of friends, and we had gotten pulled aside from the park that we were walking by the police. And the police had asked all of us like what we were doing in that area. And we had explained to them we were walking home. And so this is the normal route that we would all take. And considering the majority of us had like a homework group, we would probably just congregate at one person's home. So they had pulled me aside specifically, and they had asked me if I had any kind of drugs on me, and I was completely confused. I had no idea what the heck was going on. Like,
wait. I don't want to cut you off, but I want to land there for a minute. So you were 14, you're walking home with a group of friends, and you're stopped and asked if you have any drugs on you. Yikes. So in that moment, like, what was your initial thought, and how did the people you were with react?
So I was frightened. I didn't know exactly what was going on. And luckily, a friend of mine who knew more about her rights than I did, or our rights than I did at that moment, she had actually stepped in and said, hold up, you can't be asking us these kinds of questions. We were just walking home from school. We've explained exactly what we were doing and where we are going. And you have no reason as to pull our friend aside and ask her if she has any kinds of drugs when there is no proof that we have been doing anything like that. And so the police had explained, oh, well, in this certain park, there's a lot of kids who come home from school and they like to stop off and smoke some weed. And we were like, cool. So that's us though. So we're going to go home now.
Wow. So that's insane. I guess I'm glad that they at least gave you an explanation to why they stopped you. Did that make you feel any better about the stop?
It actually was them. It was actually my friends overhearing what they had asked me. And that's when my friend had stepped in and was like, no, you can't be asking us these kinds of questions. We've explained why we're at this park, why we're walking by. You have no right to be asking her this at all.
Yikes. So the aftermath, what did the aftermath look like? Did you carry that for any length of time, or did you wonder why that happened? Or did you just accept at that point that this may be something that people in the skin experience?
So I was raised to be colorblind in a way, and I think that is also because I am biracial. So when my parents had gotten divorced, I had ended up living with my mother, who is white, and that's kind of the way that we were raised. So I didn't really see color, if that makes sense. So when we were walking home after that, I was a little bit shooken up, and then my friend, the one that stepped in and said, "Hey, so you were a victim of racial profiling, and I really am glad that I was here to help you in that situation at that time." And I was like, whoa, what does that even mean? What racial profiling, what does that even mean? And then she explained, like, well, look at all of us. Like, there's 2 Hispanics and there's a bunch of white kids, and you're the only girl here who is Black.
Wow. So two questions that I have there, and then we're gonna land for a minute, and we'll come back. When you say, and I'm always interested to ask this question, or in asking this question to people that were taught not to see color, do you feel like that was beneficial? And B, do you think that you would teach that if you were on the other end of that? Would you teach people to see color and just know that there are differences, or no difference aside from the color, or to be colorblind? Do you think that teaching was beneficial?
I do not think that teaching was beneficial. I guess I can understand where my mom was coming from with trying to teach that to me and my brother, but at the same time, I do not think it was beneficial, and I personally would not pass that down. I definitely would acknowledge color because there is a difference. There's a completely different, even with Black people, as we all know, we're from all different parts of the world. So ignoring that, I think, is it's a really big issue, and it's quite detrimental to people like myself who have grown up in this colorblind world.
Got you. I like to highlight the differences sometimes because I think when I was doing the series with men, and for the all 5 days, all 5 Black men had an experience with the police by the time that they were at least 15. And all of them said that they held that experience with them as either a reason to be more cautious, or fearful, or a feeling that they subsided for an extended period of time. Did you feel like after that experience, and your friends kind of explaining that you were racially profiled, do you feel like that you started to expect that racial profiling, or if you weren't expecting that, did you experience that again after that?
Yes, I certainly have experienced it multiple times afterwards. And I would possibly say it definitely stayed with me. It was a bit of a traumatic event. And then going home and trying to express what had happened to me, my mother didn't understand. And so I had to call my father, and he had to explain a little bit better. So it did stick with me. It sure did.
I wonder when you felt like your mom, or when your mom, let me not say felt like, when she did have trouble explaining it to you, did you feel like she even hit the ballpark of understanding what you had experienced, or was there a sense of, and this is not an offense to your mom, but a desire to kind of white explain what had happened?
So it's a bit of both. So my mother and I have a very interesting relationship because at this point in our lives, I'm the one who's constantly checking her on her white privilege. I'm constantly checking her on how she perceives people and how she brings those kinds of people into conversations when she's talking to me, because I think it's very wrong to, and especially since she's a woman who raised me to be this way, I think it's very interesting and scary how her mindset has really shifted into this uh, half in, half out kind of thinking, if that makes
Got
sense,
it.
explaining it. So she does white explain a lot.
Okay. Okay. Do you think that the white explaining helps you interpret white feelings at all?
Yes.
Okay. I
Certainly
want to talk. That's really interesting. I want to talk to you a little bit more about that. So stay with me. I'm going to bring Kirsten in, and she's going to join the conversation, and then Guinevere, I'll be right back with you.
No problem.
Okay. Kirsten, welcome to Unmuted Nation.
Hi, Alex. How are you, hon?
I'm well. How are you?
I'm well. Thank you for having me. Thank you for this platform. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And thank you for joining. It's such a, for me, and I think I've said this on a few shows, for as long as I've been doing media and specifically radio, I have never had these types of conversations specifically and intentionally with my own people. And I think that the strongest thing that we have to aid each other in a collective fight that we have is understanding and communication. And so I think that's such a big part of what we all need. So thank you for joining me. And if you wouldn't mind just telling me a little bit about where you're from and what you do.
So again, my name is Kirsten. I am from California, Los Angeles to be exact. And I've been here for the entirety of my life. For career-wise, I work in the healthcare industry. I've been in the healthcare industry for about 10 years now. I work for a home health agency where I'm the office manager, but on the side, in my passion and what I really want to end up doing in life is my business, which is Melanated Moments. And that is my spirit, mind, body, and soul boutique. And it's what we're doing now. I just pour into my people, into Black people, people of color, empower them, heal them, anything I can. And that is my way of doing my portion for whatever healing needs to be done within the community.
Got it. I love that. I love that. So similar to the question that I asked Guinevere, I'm going to ask you, when was the first time that you knew that you were a Black girl?
I think I would say I've pretty much have always known I was a Black girl. Although I am from Los Angeles, South Central, which is predominantly where Black people live in Los Angeles. Due to violence and everything to that sort in this immediate area, when I was born, my mom took me out, right, trying to move me to a better location. And we went not too far from here. It's just down the hill, about 30 minutes to an hour, and it's called the Valley. So, you know, growing up, I was always back and forth between LA and the Valley. And with that being said, I was in school in the Valley. And
got it. Was the school in the Valley predominantly white?
It was a mixture, but yes, predominantly white.
Okay.
You had whites, Pacific Asian Islanders, Hispanics. So it would only be a handful, about 5% of African Americans or Blacks at every school I went to. you know. So I would always be able to tell the difference skin wise in that manner. I would always be able to tell that me and the people who look like me would congregate over here and everyone else would be over there. So I was always able to tell in that manner that I was Black. And then just coming back up on the hill, you know, back to the city to be with my family on the weekends and things of that sort, I knew it wasn't different then because I was taken out of that diverse community and brought back to what we would call the hood.
Right. Right. So in knowing so soon, do you think that, could you ever pinpoint different treatment towards you, or deliberately different treatment towards you in the presence of so many different cultures?
Just from us being transparent, no, I cannot.
Okay.
No, I cannot. And I think it may be because I was always well versed and articulate. You know, my mom, like I said, I was kind of raised in the area of the Valley. My mom had a very great job to where she was working with a lot of Asians and a lot of whites. So I was accustomed to that. I would go into the office with her. You know, she would correct me on my speaking, things to that sort. So because they find a difference, right? In how we interact and how we communicate.
Absolutely.
So because I was able to communicate well, I probably didn't have those issues. I also find that I have always been, even with me being able to express myself and converse, I have always been authentically Black. And for some reason, they took to that. They gravitated towards that. You know what I'm saying?
No, absolutely.
To where I didn't, it felt more like love than anything else.
I got it. I like to share, because I hate for the conversation to be one-sided. So I always like to share a little bit of my experiences. So we have context, right? And I think that when we had the conversation with so many men, so many of all of the experiences were different. There were a lot of similar feelings at once they arrived at a certain point. For me, I grew up, I was born in St. Louis and I grew up in Atlanta, but I grew up in a predominantly white part of Atlanta. And the one thing that did, while I spent my weekends and most of my time with a lot of Black people, my school environment was very white. And even up to this point, I think a lot of my experiences where I grew up, it was more classist more classism in around than anything else. And so I'm going to fast forward to me leaving there, and here we are 20 years later. And when we started to see that current unrest in the country, and I started to speak out as my experiences as a Black man, because I left that environment when I turned 18. It was just I'm not a suburban guy, so it didn't work for me. And but the acceptance that I had there was all totally about my class. Like, I would get invited places with white people on the weekends because they knew our family. They knew it was and the community was like, I used to call it Disney all the time, because that's just what it felt like. Leaving that and stepping into, I moved to the South Georgia, actually. To a really rural area for college, and I immediately knew that I was just a Black man, and none of who I was actually came out. And even sometimes, even with the way that I spoke and the way that I carried myself, that didn't matter, and that it was overshadowed so much. And I think environment has a lot to do with it. But I like to bring that to the conversation because I think there are a lot of assumptions that are made, and so even for people watching or listening for the first time, and maybe they haven't seen this series before, there's a lot of assumptions made, especially when they see, and we often have to educate people on how offensive it is to tell a Black person that they're articulate. But for people to embark on even this broadcast right now and see you and I conversing, the immediate thought is, wow, well, where did they find them? So I think that while that's not everyone's experience, it's a true experience. And I'm glad that you joined the conversation. I want to bring Guinevere back, and I want to talk to you both. Both of you guys are from the West. Oh, both of you ladies have it. Are on the West Coast, and I think I see just in me doing this series, I see stark differences just between the environments and the exposure of people, Black people specifically, that come from the West Coast. They have a little bit of a different experience, and it's not just the diversity, but it's also there's not a deep-seated history
Absolutely.
that
Absolutely.
is carried into where we are today. So in both of the experiences, well, in all of your experiences, you kind of embark on what you do today. What is it like for you to be receptive in the areas that you work in? Do you still feel that same acceptance that you've always felt? Well, not acceptance may not be the right word. Do you feel the same reception from the same type of communities that you've always felt?
You know, now that I am older, no, I don't. It's awkward for me, especially because I am now living fully as myself with 0 F's given. It's difficult to be in the workspace that I am. I'm gonna tell you, I work predominantly with Asians. Like, I'm the only Black person. The name of my company is Pacific Asian Consortium Employment. So I have to adapt to them. I have to learn their traditions, their culture, and kind of tweak myself to cater to them. And it's difficult for me because it's like I'm unseen. As we can tell right now, for our people, we are going through a very traumatic experience right now. And just to reference, I get an email June 12th in the midst of all of this stating awareness for racism for Asians during these times. So for things like that, for me to receive something like that, it's like, okay, they don't get it. And it definitely makes me want to remove myself from that position sooner than later.
I want to land there for a second and talk about that a little bit, because I think that feeling that you're expressing is a real feeling that we have. And that as a Black woman, when you feel and in so many spaces, it's possible for you to feel unseen and unheard. And not just from other communities. Also, and I want to talk about this too, but also within our own community, times that you don't feel seen and you don't feel heard. And there's Black women. I surround myself with Black women, so I hear these stories. And while I am almost painfully cognizant of my surroundings and the truth that's happening in so many circles, so many people are not. When you say that you don't feel seen, do you feel safe articulating that?
In that space, yeah.
In that space.
In my corporate America 9 to 5, yes.
You do.
But in my regular life, I'm definitely seen. But in that space where pre-COVID, I was spending the majority of my day, giving the highest percentage of my energy to other people, I can definitely feel unseen. Like I said, I'm an office manager. So a lot of the times I'm doing more work than what my co-partners are doing, and they're making more than me. They have more say than me. They have more pull than me. And then things that transpire can fall back on me. So I feel unseen in that sense. Go ahead, honey.
No, I'm just asking, do you feel, in those spaces that you feel unseen, do you feel comfortable articulating that or sharing that with them?
From time to time. But we also don't want to be seen as the angry Black woman, right?
You're right.
I had the administrator that I have now, he's been with us for over 3 years, and it just came to me late last year while sitting down at lunch that he is surprised I turned out the way that I am, because when he first met me, he thought I was crazy, right? Because he came into a pretty bad situation, and that situation was harming my health, my mental stability, So for me to get that point across, I had to break down exactly what was going on. I didn't break that down with any anger. I did it in a subtle way. And for you to even feel right, that's what they do. They take that. Oh, that's an angry Black woman. Oh, she's honorable.
Absolutely.
Oh, she's going
Absolutely.
crazy.
Well, I'm going to bring Guinevere back because I think this is a spot that people are always curious about. We can say that there is this stigma of the angry black woman, but people don't hear it. They ignore it. They don't want to feel it. They don't want to see it. And just like we have, we have an angry Black man too. It's an angry Black person. They just see us this way. And I for one believe that women always feel that pressure more than Black men do, because Black men will just be like, all right, well, especially me being from the South, all right, man, I'm out. But the angry Black woman is in this position that it's like, I'm already a woman. I speak my truth. I tell you the truth, and I tell you straight on, and then this happens. Guinevere, have you ever been taxed with that label, angry Black woman?
I would say no, and I think that's just because I have learned to let my aggression out in different ways, and so I try very hard, especially when I'm in the face of certain people who have offended me. Especially in professional life, not so much in my civil life. In my professional life, I've learned how to internalize certain terrible commentary and then let that aggression out later on.
Got you.
Don't want to.
In that same vein, do you feel like the desire to suppress your aggression for the sake of, I guess, another culture or another person, do you feel like that's suppression, or do you feel like that's just a better decision so that you don't have to face that aggression or the stigma of the angry Black woman?
Oh, I definitely think so. I think it's definitely a suppression and oppression in that regard, because I am not allowed to show my frustration or my anger. And if I am, there will be consequences. Whereas somebody else can totally let out their aggression and tell the world how they feel, and everybody just looks at them like, oh, they must just be very angry. I think we should listen to them. Whereas I feel like, oh, go ahead.
What are some things that you and Kirsten, this question for you? What are the types of things that you feel are normal that get you labeled as the angry Black woman?
Something just as simple as speaking your truth. It can be just as simple as that. Because you spoke out and you protected yourself that one time, that can label you as an angry Black woman. And I can be sitting here talking to you as calmly as I am now, but she's an angry Black woman because she spoke out, because she spoke against what the master or the boss said, so something as simple as that, that's normal. I think we are at a point to where things need to be conversated about. We need to have these conversations. We need to speak up. And I'm not saying, be boisterous every time, but there are some times where your peace is more than keeping something in.
I agree with that.
I think that's spot on. In wrapping this conversation, because I think we literally land here and be here all day. What do you think, and this is an individual question, so I don't think there's a right or wrong answer. I think whatever your answer here is applies. And I'm going to preface this by saying, I always say, because of where I grew up and how I grew up, I've never been a person to second guess how Black I am. I am, it is what it is. But I have heard and I have mentored people that have felt like people told them, oh, you're not Black enough, or Black people don't do that. And I say this all the time. If you're Black and you do it, then Black people do it. That's a gift that you get. That's something that comes with the skin. And not one Black person can tell you what we don't do, because we do it all. And we do it the best. That said, what is the biggest misconception do you think people have on misconception that they have about things that Black women don't do.
Oh, interesting.
I'll let you think on it for a second, but I know that there's probably something that came out already. I always love the first thing, your first thought, because I feel like that's the realest thing. But there are misconceptions, and just I want to know from your perspective, what are some things that you feel like people think Black people don't, or Black women don't do, that they absolutely do?
For me, I would say this very conversation. You know, a lot of people feel like Black women don't speak up for themselves, and I can say they don't speak up for for themselves, and that's why, in someone else's eyes, not in my eyes, we are underrated. You know, we are not respected in such a light as to where we should be, because they feel like not only do we not protect ourselves and speak up for ourselves, but we're also not getting it on the back end with the others from our community.
Kirsten, what do you think?
Oh, I would like to personally add on that. I would say that Black women aren't necessarily allowed to feel pain. And I don't mean that in the like physical sense, but I mean like there is the archetype of strong Black woman, which is wonderful, which is great, but at the same time that also leaves very little room for a Black woman in particular, to actually let out her truth, which exactly goes along with what Kirsten was saying. Like, we're not allowed to speak our truth, because if we are, we're deemed as the angry Black woman. But we're supposed to be strong at all times. We're supposed to be something amazing. We're supposed to be the ones saving everybody. We're supposed to be the ones who are the greatest mothers and all this kinds of stuff. But at the same time, we're still not allowed to feel pain.
Right. Absolutely, Guinevere. Almost like we can't tolerate pain. Like, give them pain because they can handle it. You know? Definitely.
Like, they can do everything. They're the best jugglers. We're the best jugglers. And it's like, no. I still have these pains and I still have these frustrations. And it's very unfortunate that it's taken such a long time for people to acknowledge that Black women do experience pain in more aspects than one, in one area of life than one. Like, we can
Right. Well, I'm just saying, what we do know is that misconception, it actually expands into everything, right? Black women are ignored by doctors. Black women are ignored during childbirth. Like, and the statistics are staggering. Most people don't know.
Are staggering.
And when they hear it, they ignore it. And it's the same way that Black women are ignored in hospital rooms, and just because of this stigma, it's another stigma that must change, that Black women are strong, and that just they are resilient to the point to where they don't feel their strength precludes them from feeling pain. And I think that's I'm gonna sit with that for a second, because I love the answers that you both gave. I think I want to jump into some of the unrest that we're seeing right now, and conversations that I've just not had on this show, but I've had with Black women on often how they can be leaders of something or leaders of a movement and not getting that same type of support when it comes to, and I'm going to use Black Lives Matter as an example, because so many of the movements that happened post Trayvon Martin and Mike Brown, and a lot of the Black men that we've lost to unarmed gun violence and police brutality and rogue white men. So many of those movements have been led by Black women. And while we see Black women dying also by the hands of the police and by rogue individuals, and also Black women missing that no one's talking about, it's often that I hear that Black women feel forgotten. What would you say? What if you have any thoughts about what we you can speak to Black men as far as I'm concerned, what we could do better to support black women, aside from just first speaking up, because a lot of that isn't done. And I've seen more recently, but it's something that bothers me. But as I hear this report from Black women often, that they don't feel the same support that they feel like they're giving to their people. Where do you sit when it comes to that conversation?
I think that when it comes to that kind of conversation, when it comes to the interaction of having a conversation, we know that we're supposed to speak and we're supposed to listen. But I think that there's become a misstep in how people have conversations, to the point where now we have people talking over one another. And so now I think that when it comes to speaking out, we also have a new kind of suppressor in this voice, who's trying to speak over us as Black women. Like they hear what we're saying and they're on our side, but they're still speaking over us. Does that make sense the way I said that?
Yeah. No, it does. It does. Kirsten, what about you?
This would be a touchy topic for me, because just up until recently, I would say these last 2 years, I didn't feel that way, right? It was kind of like it had to be brought right in front of my eyes. I've always held a special place for Black men. That has always been like a high concern of mine. I don't know. Well, I do know. It's, I was raised a lot around a lot of Black men. The dearest people to me are Black men. I have a Black son. So that was where kind of like how women are able to take on these leadership roles is because we possess this mothering nature, right?
Right.
So that's always what that was for me. I need to help them. They go through so much. They have the world on their shoulders, so that's where my heart always lied. And it wasn't here just so recently where I start discovering, okay, Kirsten, you kind of going a little hard, and there's nothing to reciprocate that energy. Where I'm from and where I live, I can be driving down the street and there can be a man brutally beating a woman on the street, and there's no one. There's all these men around, but there's no one to help. So I just had to take that realization and step back and know that we kind of have to fight for our women too, as opposed to always being the other way around.
I agree with that.
I think it's interesting, and I'm sorry that you even have to feel that way. And I think that there's a lot of conditioning that we have to be intentional on changing directly. And I think we, for one, have to stop relying on Black women to only be the ones to be intentional about making that change. And so I appreciate both of you just speaking candidly about that and just being honest about those feelings, because I think when this is heard by people that don't consider this, and the entire reason for this conversation is really for it to be used as a teaching tool, right? Like what are Black women saying? What are we not hearing? What do we not know? Or what do we take for granted? Do you feel like I guess to follow up that question, do you feel like in these last 2 years, at least, that Black men are ready to stand up for you?
I would say yes and no.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think we're getting there.
Right.
We're getting there.
I'll take progress.
Slow progress is better than no progress, right?
Absolutely.
True.
Yeah.
Absolutely. In this, we're in really tense times right now, and I think that I'm interested to hear your perspective, Kirsten, because you have a Black son. And I think that there's so much conditioning, and I'm going to talk generationally because we've seen different types of conditioning for different generations. And it's really been in response to how we are treated as people in this country specifically. And so the conditioning from what you would say, and I think about my grandmother, and she's I think based on how she was raised and the things that she thought and the way that she was taught, there was always some sort of assimilation there. Not because she was the assimilationist, like she wasn't trying to appease white people, but she knew what they wouldn't tolerate. And then you go a generation later and you have, some resistance to that. And then you go another generation later and you have more resistance to that. And now I'm in the millennial generation, but I look at Generation Z and they have the ultimate resistance to, and I think post them it's gonna be even more extreme. But they're not people that say they're not gonna sit by and take anything. They have an opinion on everything. They don't do things because white people said they should. And I think I asked that. I'm gonna ask a question, but I want to talk about conditioning that you may have had as a child. Were you ever taught that you had to be a certain way to be accepted?
Certainly.
Talk to me a little bit about that, Guinevere.
Well, as an example, like this is a pretty broad example that I think that most of us can relate to. When we're having a conversation in a loud restaurant and there's a lot of people talking and it just so happens that your group is pointed out for being too loud, like that's an example of like, hey, you're stepping a little bit too much into your Black self. You should probably come back into the white area here. Like just as a small example.
No, and that's a real example. That's a real example, or the stigma that the assumption, the stereotype that Black people are just loud. Mm-hmm. People are loud.
People are loud.
We are joyous people.
Yeah, but in addition to that, we are passionate people, and so I think passionate speaking and passionate living is often it can be manipulated when it's not, and I'm not going to say it's misunderstood, when it's ignored and devalued. So when you're naturally passionate, it can easily be classified as nuisance, right? Or you're a nuisance, or you're a problem. And it's the same way that we see, before I move on into that, because I'll get started. I'll just get started. Kirsten, tell me about, did you ever feel like you were conditioned to have to do things so that you would have acceptance?
I think that it wasn't beaten into me, so to speak. It wasn't told to me. It was just always a norm with me living in the area that I was in. My mom sending me to schools far away from the home. It was just kind of like, okay, that, and then, that's how I'm supposed to be. That's how I'm supposed to act. And then when I would go back to Los Angeles, I would see my family, and friends of the family, how they would act, and then go back home. So I just knew that, me being in that area, I was supposed to have a certain demeanor to myself.
Right. Got you. The purpose for me asking that question is because I don't think people realize how young code switching is taught to people in Black skin. And so
deliberately or non-deliberately.
Mm-hmm.
It's something that is inferred. So children learn very quickly that when they're around certain people, they watch their parents do something. When they're around other people, or when they deem a different type of skin color to have a certain type of authority, then the reasons to code switch are there. And code switching is not something that has to be embraced by all Americans. Like, let's just be honest with that. That's not, if Black people could be their authentic self 100% of the time, we would never be having any of these conversations. And so I think when it comes to the next generation, Kirsten, do you feel like you have to, in 2020, prepare your son to code switch?
I'm not going to.
I almost threw up my fist. I love that answer.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not going to. I haven't been. I took a look at my life and my upbringing. I'm grateful for it, right? Because it made me diverse. It made me be able to connect with all type of people. But at the same time, if I could have just been around my people, I would have done that. I see when we start talking about diversity and moving to different areas so you can get a better education, that doesn't sit well with me because I was able to, my goal was to find my son is 7 now. He's been in school since he was 2. So he's been at 2 different schools, and each of them were predominantly Black schools that were on the top charts. You understand? So that was very important for me to find a school where they have great scholastics. The teachers are amazing and have a passion for their children, where they're learning more Black history other than Martin Luther King and Harriet Tubman. You know, so that was extremely important for me, and I've been able to achieve that so far. My son is an amazing, smart young man. So I don't plan on, I don't plan on doing that. I do have to have conversations right now when he talks to me about him having a fear of being Black and the police interfering, and who does he call if he needs help for mommy. And he has a fear of calling who he's supposed to call. I have those conversations, but within those conversations, I still let my son know that Black is beautiful. Black is power. This is why they're doing this. This is why they're mad. Those conversations for us to have with our children, especially in today's time, and how you said, this generation right here, they're really showing up. And that's the plan for my son. All I can do is pray and instill in him the best way that I can. But
No,
I don't think that would be the best way for me.
Absolutely. No, I appreciate. I really want to say I appreciate you saying that, just because I think that a number of parents, not just in collectively, but I just think that a number of parents have to be taught. Like, I think and I think the experience of not just millennials, but I think the experience of collectively Black people and people in Black and brown bodies, you have to go a little bit further than the numbers. I think that it's not abnormal for Black people to have been considered excluded from statistics and things along those lines. When you look up the top school in the country and say, I want my son or my daughter to go there, it's not including the experience that's going to come along with that. And I think the way that you articulated, Kirsten, and this is an honest moment, any previous listeners will know that I've said this, a conversation that I had with my parents when I had to be 17, maybe 18, because they did what they knew and they did the best that they could.
Absolutely.
And they did exactly what they thought they were supposed to do. The difference with me, I grew up in a very Black city. And so there was affluence everywhere. It wasn't limited to the white area. And no matter what it said on paper, what we often find is for Black people to have the right tools, the parent has to be part of that education. Because if you're sending your Black child into an all-white environment right now, thinking that these all-white people, and this is not bashing, this is just truthful, they're going to have the same
outcome.
Passion.
Yeah.
The same passion for educating them about their Blackness. And that's an education. You could say, well, white people aren't getting educated on their whiteness, but they absolutely are, because everything that they're learning surrounds whiteness. Everything that they're learning is enhanced by whiteness, and their lives are enhanced by whiteness. And so the Blackness has to be explained and articulated and educated. If you know who you are and you know what you come from and you know what you're capable of, that oftentimes has to come from the parental unit. So you just sharing that piece right there, and the fact that you have made the decision not to force your child to code switch, which is not. I think on the other side, I would encourage you to ensure that he knows that it's not always going to be a cakewalk.
Absolutely.
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 So we're running out of time, but I want to ask this question, and it's for both Guinevere and Kirsten, and I want you guys to be as candid and as genuine with this one as you want to. If you could look at a young Black girl right now, 15, 16, 17, 18, classify young however you want to classify, 25, whatever, and you could speak to them about owning their truth, what would you say?
I would say, know that you are powerful. Like, know that who you are and who you are becoming every single day is powerful. That's what I would say in simplified form.
I love it. Kirsten, same question.
Well, this is sort of like the work I do already, right? So I'm definitely going to let that little girl know that she is a queen. I am going to let her know that she is the beginning and the end. And whatever comes her way, there's going to be a fight. There's going to be a fight, right? If I had someone telling me these things when I was that age, it would have been a whole different outcome. The outcome is great now, but it wouldn't have taken me this long to get to where I am. So it's very important that we be mindful and that we instill the right things in these young women of today's society, because there is a lot that can break them down, and they may not have that support at home or through their teachers. So it's women like us who are on this show that need to empower these young girls to keep it pushing, move forward, walk with grace, and just be what they can be the strongest they can be.
I feel you, and I want to know because I think, like I said at the beginning of the show tonight, I don't think that we move anything forward without, I think movements happen, and we can't be monolithic. And I think I want to sneak one more question in because then I'll wrap it up. Just bear with me. I think that we're in right now. We are having a conversation, and I have not asked this question specifically during this series, and it's one that I think is important. And I think with any movement, any action, anytime you want to see things move forward, you need to have conversations and you need to have a focal point. You need to be able to understand what the goal is. And so as we talk about how Black women aren't monolithic, Black men are not monolithic, Black people are not monolithic, and we talk about the unrest that we have right now with Black Lives Matter, and then we have violence that's happening. Crime is something that's always going to be with us, unfortunately. It's in every culture. I want to know specifically how you answer people from any culture, Black culture included, that wonder how you can say Black Lives Matter in one voice and not be as vocal about Black violence.
Ooh, okay. So I guess with that, I would retort.
I tried it too. I'm looking at my time and I was like, I'm going with it.
I guess with that, I would retort with, where are you when it comes to with white on white violence? Like, where are you when it comes to Latinx violence on each other? Like, realistically, I think a lot of people that purposefully tries to change the trajectory of where the movement is going or wants to end up. So I think when people bring that up in a conversation and make it seem like, oh, well, there's also Black on Black crime, like, how come you're not so vocal about that? Because you're not vocal about white on white crime. Okay.
Which is at 84%. But
you know, we don't want to talk about those kind of facts. You know what I mean? So I think that it's all a deterrent. All these kinds of extra added conversations are all a deterrent to what the movement is supposed to be and how it's trying to get from point A to point B.
Or that there's just one movement.
Yeah.
Yes.
Ultimately.
Got you. Kirsten.
So that's definitely another touchy subject for me.
I know it's probably a whole nother show, but
yeah, I am. I've experienced a lot of violence. In my family, people dying from gang, violence tremendously, and a lot of it has built me into who I am today. But when we talk about that, there needs to be a deeper talk, because it's not just Black on Black violence or Black on Black crime. What that is the systemic effects, the systemic and systematic effects of what the beginning of the reason is anyways. You secluding Black people to a one area. We have these Black people who are not only receiving trauma on this level right now, but are also experiencing generational trauma, post-traumatic slave syndrome. So you have to take all of those things and look at that and see why it is that Black on Black crime is so high. And that's why we need centers for like healing, and our people need psychiatrists and things of that sort, because that's why we're not that in nature. We're not that type of person. We're not that type of people. We are a loving people. We are a people of community. We are a people of giving, So you have to look at the effects that racism has brought upon that.
Great answers. And I wish I had more time, but I'm totally out. And ladies, I could not thank you more for just joining this conversation and being a part of this today. Guinevere, how do people keep up with you?
So you can follow me on Instagram at GuinSkin, GuinSkin, all one word. And
Okay.
I also have a YouTube channel by the exact same name, GuinSkin.
Okay. We'll look you up and make sure all of your information is out there so that people can connect. Kirsten, how do we keep up with you?
You can reach me on Instagram at Melanated Moments, which is MELANATED Moments, MOMENTS. And I would love to connect with everyone. You too, Guinevere.
Yeah, I would love to connect with
you.
Definitely. We'll make sure you two connect, and both of you please stay connected with us, because these conversations will continue. I feel like it's important for us to have these conversations, not just on radio shows or TV shows or whatever, but amongst each other. So these conversations will continue. You know how we do it at The Nation. Download the BossFM Radio app. Follow Unmuted Nation on Facebook and Instagram, and share it. And this show, I've done so many shows. This is my latest show. We're not a old show. We haven't been around very long, but we're gonna have these conversations, and we're not gonna stop. I think the only people that can move forward this culture is us, and we must be intentional with that. With that, I'm gonna wrap. And as always, remember, today is greater. Oh, first, follow me also, I guess. Alex Unmuted, Instagram and Twitter. Today is greater. Believe it, speak it, and live it. You have to make the choice to be great. Your situation is not your destination, so go make it your motivation. That's going to conclude Unmuted Nation for tonight. We will see you tomorrow, 1 p.m. BossFM Radio.